welcome to the RD2RD Live Show. This week, we are talking about a topic that we haven't given any real attention to since the show started almost 2 years ago now, and that is community programs. And I have Katie Shepard on today, and we were actually just chatting before the show started about there's so much focus on online programs and virtual nutrition services and even, one-to-one private practice counseling, that there are also many opportunities as a registered dietitian, and one of those is offering community programs, things such as presentations for groups, troops, hosting summer camps, even adult programs from the library to senior centers. There is a great need for our knowledge as registered dietitians, and we can monetize that into community programs. So Katie and I are going to talk about how she's built a business around offering programs such as those in her community, and kind of an inside look at how she organizes, a little bit about pricing, what works, and we'll take your questions. So if you're tuning in here with us live, you can drop your questions in. I'll scroll through routinely and fit those in. I have a nice question list already prepared for Katie, as I always do, so that we can stay on track and get the most out of our time together today. So, Katie, why don't you give us a little bit of background about your journey as a registered dietitian and kind of how you came into Food Explorers and the business that you have now?
So I graduated 5 years ago now, and I knew that I wanted to be very like pediatric based, but I kind of imagined that I would be like a clinical dietitian in the children's hospital or something like that. So that's what I really kind of spent my time focusing on. And then I graduated and I went to WIC for a year and a half because I didn't want to do adult clinical, which is what everyone suggested. But I went to WIC for 18 months and kind of gained some counseling experience and kind of like background into how families actually eat. And then I left that because it was getting a little repetitive. So I left that and went to retail. So I was a retail dietitian for a year and discovered that wasn't good for me, but it's what introduced me to kids programming, because when you're a retail dietitian you do community programming throughout the town that you're in. So that's kind of what introduced me to kids cooking classes. So
Okay. I think so. As a retail dietitian, is that like at a grocery store chain or?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so there's this chain that has dietitians in pretty much every store.
Okay.
So not every grocery store has that, but so it's a good job if it just wasn't the job for me.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really interesting, kind of that combination of, it's always funny how what we've done over our career somehow perfectly comes together to
Yeah,
what you're doing now. Sometimes like this whole
yeah,
combination makes no sense, yet it makes complete sense with what you're
yeah,
doing now of community programs. It's
as
kind
much
of a
as much
tailored
as it
towards kids.
wasn't as much as it wasn't the right fit, I wouldn't have Food Explorers if it wasn't for that. So
Right, right. So let's talk about your business, Food Explorers,
Mhm.
and kind of the types of programs for someone who doesn't really know what you do. Talk to us about what you do.
Yeah, so when I was a retail dietitian, I would go to the local library and do free programs because they were kind of sponsored by ShopRite. And so I would do kids programming for preschoolers when they had their morning story time. So I would go in with like a snack and we would like play a game about nutrition. And then when I left the retail store, I told the librarian that I was leaving, that I would miss them. And she was like, well, I can pay you so that you can keep doing programs. I was like, really? Because I didn't know that libraries have actual budgets to bring in outside people, like vendors or entertainers. So she told me that if I just like set myself up, and she would pay me to keep like bringing me back to do programs. So that's kind of how it got going. And I'm lucky that my mum also worked at a library, so she got me into her library, and then she told another library about me, so it kind of like slowly began to kind of go from there. But that's something I didn't realize, was that libraries have money for that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
who
where
knew?
I make a little bit of money too.
Oh, very interesting. So,
Yeah.
how did you develop your portfolio of programs? So, obviously, starting at the library, what kind of happened next? How did the growth, what
So
happened?
So I'm a bit of a procrastinator. But so, I always try and come up with a program that's kind of half cooking or food assembly and then half nutrition education. But I don't make it a lecture. I don't make it kind of like sitting down and like me just talking at them, because if it's an after school program, they've just had 8 hours of lecture. So I try and make it more fun. And so when I'm kind of coming up with a new program, I always try and kind of go backwards and figure out what the snack is going to be, because that can be the most challenging, because there's a lot of requirements that I find when I have to come up with a snack. Like, it should be nut free, it has to be something that can be no bake and no cook, it has to have enough steps in it that a bunch of kids can like each have something to do, it has to have ingredients that can be um, accessible to parents if they wanted to make it at home, so it can't be like the most expensive ingredient that I can find. uh, so once I've kind of come up with a snack, I'll kind of figure out a game or an activity to kind of like match that snack. Like if I do a lesson about sugar, then I'll do a low sugar snack and kind of I have a group of flashcards of different foods with sugar in them, and I'll have them put it in order of which has the most at the least amount of sugar. So I'll try and have them kind of make sense together.
Nice. So, I want to kind of, you know, talk about some of the challenges that came up, but I also know this past summer you
Mhm.
started doing kids cooking camps and did a lot of those. So this whole thing
Yeah,
about food, I don't know, food to me and food and kids and safety and allergies just kind of gets these
right.
crazy concerns going on for me about how do you practically do that as far as bringing the food in and safety of the food handling? Just kind of talk a little bit about that, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit more.
Well, so first of all, I have insurance, which was difficult to find because I'm not a dietitian that's just doing counseling. They wouldn't, I'm not even covered as a dietitian. I'm covered as a culinary instructor, um, because I'm doing really food prep. I'm not counseling. So I'm covered under insurance. And then I always keep everything nut free. And I've even had a few kids that have nut allergies actually sign up for my programs. So I make everything nut free. I have them sign allergy waivers. I email parents a couple of days before the program like session is going to begin, and I'll let them know what we're going to cook and if they have any allergies that I don't know about or any sensitivities or anything like that. And then when I'm packing, I always check what kind of equipment they have, like if they have a fridge for me to keep things cold in, and if they don't, then I'll bring a cold cooler and things like that. So it's just like making sure I cover all my bases, like reaching out to parents and making sure there's no allergies and checking that I don't have anything with nuts in and things like that. But it's definitely doable.
Yeah, the logistics, like you meant, of the
Yeah,
venue that you're at, figuring out what's available, matching up
yeah.
what you're bringing. And then you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned culinary. Can you say that again? Culinary
A
profession?
culinary instructor of the arts
Culinary.
is what I'm insured
Oh,
as, instead of just a dietitian that does counseling,
okay.
because that isn't what I do.
Did you have to get any kind of special, I mean, like a Serve Safe certification or
I
food
had to do that
handlers?
anyway. Yeah, I had that anyway, so it kind of makes me feel better. Another a Parks and Rec department that I work with just recently asked that all their instructors get CPR certified as well, so I've had to do that. So I'm kind of covered under that too.
Okay.
Um, and so that's nobody's ever asked for like a Serve Safe certification, but I figured because I have it, I always send it to people just to kind of let them know that I have it.
Yeah. So talk to me about the after school programs that you offer. So how did you get get the gig, I guess, did you approach? How has word got out about your business? What's growth been like? Did you just go into a school and be like, hey, I want to offer an after school program? No. So what does it really look like?
Schools are difficult to get into. I think I got lucky. I reached out to probably every school district within like an hour radius of me in all directions within like the first couple of months of me opening the business. And I had one email back, and I hadn't done any programs yet, but she was willing to book me for after school programs and to book me for a summer camp, which I hadn't done yet either. So she kind of had faith in me like from the beginning. So last summer, my first summer, I did 2 summer camps, and this summer I did 10. And then last year, my first like semester of after school programs, I think I had 2 or 3, and now I have one like every day. So I don't know how many.
So let's pause there. When you say a summer camp, what does that look like? Are you talking like a 9 to 1 or a 2-hour, or are you part of another summer camp?
Well, I've done both. The way that I mostly do it is I'm my own specialty camp. Like most parks and recs will have their own camps that they do, and I have gone in like as a guest and done like a 1-day, half-day thing, but usually it's just me. So I do a 3-hour a day, 5-day a week camp. And so a couple of weeks this summer, I have one of those in the morning and one of those in the afternoon. So we get kind of busy. So like I said, I've done both, but usually it's just me doing it as me.
So talk to me about, there's so much logistics here, but talk to me about how you're going to structure like payment and contracts. Do you get individual payments from the parents when they're registering, or do you get booked by Parks and Rec for a set fee and then they're marketing the program? Because I have kids in summer camp, so it's like it's a big deal. There's a lot of camps. There's serious marketing in a large suburban area. Like camps are big business, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of competition. Well, so everywhere is different as far as invoicing and when you get paid. With the libraries pay me directly, but with the summer camps and after school programs, that's completely dependent on people actually signing up. So even though in my like planner I have a 4-week session set aside for a certain after school program, that doesn't mean that is going to get any kids signed up for it. So I only get paid if kids sign up for it. So I have had to cancel some sessions. It just happens. It kind of comes with the territory. Like it could just be a bad day, or it could be the wrong price, or there could be dance on that same day and everybody signed up for dance. Like it happens. So I've never had like 100% of my programs actually happen. But so those depend on kids signing up, and then the organization always takes some kind of percentage of that fee to go towards their own like marketing stuff like that. So if I wanted to charge, usually it's like a 70-30 kind of split. So we kind of figure it out that way.
But they don't, it's no minimum, like it isn't like over a certain number, it's just set.
So I have said that, but then if it's like one kid below my minimum that signed up, I don't want to cancel on the other like 4 or 5 that have signed up. So I have done it for less, just because I figure if those kids sign up and they had a good time, then they could tell their other friends about it, and then maybe the next time I'll get more sign-ups. So.
So what have you done in the community to get the word out about your camps, after school programs? What's worked? What have you tried? What hasn't worked?
Well, because the Parks and Rec departments and the schools take a fee, that covers a lot of the marketing. So I know that I could do more, but social media isn't really my strong point. So I kind of leave it up to them.
Because they send out like a pamphlet, like a catalog, a course catalog, or otherwise.
They send out like an annual or biannual like catalog of all the programs. So I'm always in that. So that goes to every single household in the town. So that's what a lot of the money goes to. And then they have like email blasts that they'll put programs in. Usually I design my own Facebook like graphics so they can post it on their Facebook specific to my program. A lot of schools send flyers home on like a Friday for parents to look at about programs. So it definitely like word gets out.
Yes, the beloved family folder that comes home, right?
Yeah, but like I've heard that kids get sent home with so many flyers that I don't know how many people actually get to see them. But.
Well, I think there's also a lot of schools have email, like you can submit to have your programs in the email that comes out, right? Like you mentioned. So those are good tips. So it's actually really interesting that you pointed out that, some of that overhead and the marketing, looking at what you enjoy doing and maybe what you don't enjoy doing, right? So some of that marketing element comes with the overhead. You say, well, I could make more money if I just offered them. But if you don't, if you can get people into the programs as part of like the Parks and Rec, or we call it like community education, community education department, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I'm fine with them doing the marketing for me.
Yeah.
But I know that I could step it up. But that's just when you have a business and it's just you can't be good at every single thing, and that's just something that I'm not good at.
Well, you're saying that last summer you had 2 camps and this summer you had 10. I would say that that's pretty big from one year to the next.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's
a lot,
good.
But like I did have one camp get cancelled. Like I would have had 11, but I had one get cancelled because I only had 3 sign up and it was a 45-minute drive away. And so with the amount that we were charging and the amount of that I would have to pay for food and then driving there, it just wouldn't have made sense. So we cancelled that one.
So we've talked a little bit about logistics, a little bit about marketing, a little bit about the types of, we didn't talk as much about activities, but that you deal with kids, and this is also something obviously that would work with adults. But before we talk about adults, what are some of the challenges? I think, we've kind of talked a little bit on the surface, things that have come up for you, maybe that surprised you and you wish you would have known. If someone's like, yeah, I'm going to start doing this, you're like, just wait a minute. Let's go chat over here for a little bit.
I think realizing that there are other people out there trying to do the same thing that don't have the same qualifications. There's a few people around me that have like health coach qualifications, or they are a kids cooking instructor and they focus on nutrition, but they don't have any training. Like they just have training through the company that they're teaching through. So that's frustrating because I see them in towns that I want to get into, but I can't because they already have it. And so I really kind of try and push the RD credential, but I don't think people really know like what it means. So that can be frustrating, kind of realizing that somebody beat me to it. And then having cancellations is tough, especially when you're like counting on that session, like you needed the money from that session and then it gets cancelled. That can be frustrating. And then when you work with kids, you can have a bad kid. You can have a kid that really makes things really tough and you're the only adult in the room and you have 10 of them. And
I was gonna say, like, how many kids do you have? Do you have an assistant?
I set a max of 10, but I had one camp over the summer where they forgot what my max was. So we ended up with 13. So I ended up having an intern help me out for that. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without having another set of hands. So 13 was too much.
Yeah. So are you, like, if you're having a camp that's 3 hours, how much prep time are you spending prior to this 3-hour camp? On the day of, on the evening, like kind of walk through this. Seems like there's a lot that goes into it.
Like I definitely got better with it this summer. Last summer for the camp, I like made a grocery list at the beginning of the week, kind of with all my recipes of the things that I needed, and kind of had some idea of the activities that I wanted to do each day. But you don't really realize how long 3 hours is until you have a group of 10 kids like looking at you, expecting to be entertained for 3 hours. So last summer, every night after camp, I would come home and have to like look up new activities to like fill the time. But this year, before the camp began, I would print out my recipes, I would plan out the activities I wanted to do that day, I would have everything planned, I would make a huge list, I would pre-pack the night before, I would do the washing, like wash the dishes while I was in camp, while I had the kids like working on something else, so I didn't have to bring the dishes home with me and stuff like that. But as far as prep time, I get there like a half hour early, maybe 15 minutes early, just to get the stuff out. And then it was probably a couple of hours of prep kind of on the weekend beforehand of just printing everything. But I have a big binder of activities that I have printed now, so I don't have to spend like hours Googling for ideas. I just like whip out my folder and choose something and then print it, and then I'm good to go. So it's better now.
So you have obviously had experience with WIC, with doing retail. What are some, I guess, tools and resources, if you have to keep a group of kids entertained, right? Like some tips, and then maybe we'll talk some about adult programs next, but kind of some tips there, and like dealing with parents, maybe any suggestions there?
I think, well, as far as finding activities, it's tough. Like Pinterest has been very helpful for like the little kids of like sensory things and games. And there's one website that I use for printouts of like food word searches and like crossword puzzles and things like that, which are pre-made. The MyPlate website has some, but not a ton. But I've started just like making my own now. Like I'll make up like taste test worksheets and stuff like that and little games.
Which some of them are in your RD2RD store, right? So for those of you who can snag some of those.
Started making my own, and like if I'm at a camp for 3 hours, a word search or a crossword puzzle will be something good to keep them entertained, like while I was cleaning the dishes, because then they can kind of do it and they can just be quiet for like 10 or 15 minutes. But then like I can do a taste test activity that I've just kind of designed myself, or like my Jeopardy game, which I did myself, which I can kind of do then. So some of it I really have had to just kind of like make it myself. I didn't really have that much that I could kind of look at and take.
Yeah, starting from scratch.
Parents can be, I haven't had too many bad experiences with parents. I've had a few rough kids, and I've had to go through the school as far as like telling them that they've been bad during class, and I've had to fill out a like a disciplinary form for them. But that's only happened once. And sometimes I've had to email a parent and just say, he was pretty disruptive in class today, and usually everyone's okay with it. I had one kid come to the first day of camp and not like it, and just he didn't want to come back, which was fine. They won't like it all the time, and he was kind of disruptive when he was in class. I could tell he didn't like it, so it was fine that he didn't come back. So you just kind of roll with it.
Interesting. So I think that communication you mentioned about reaching out to the parents in advance, kind of, you want people to show, they've paid, good communication. Yeah. Do you do evaluations after? How do you evaluate the program?
Which is something I should probably do.
I was just curious.
Like I have asked for parent, like at the end of a camp or something, for like they could send like a testimonial that I can eventually put on my website if the kids had a good time. And I've had a few of those. And I have some like repeat sign-ups of kids that have signed up once and then they sign up again. So I always think that that's a good sign if I have somebody sign up for a second time.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about pricing. So what are some tips that you have? I mean, obviously you've got your time, you've got food, you've got overhead if, you're working through, someone's taking a cut because it's part of a Parks and Rec or community education programming. How do you go about starting to figure out what to price your programs at? Let's say it's after school, is that a couple hours or a camp?
Yeah, so
what's been your approach?
For the after school programs and camps, I do it by hour. And with that, I have what I want, but then if like this summer I worked with a town that had a higher level of lower income residents, so I kind of worked with Parks and Rec, and we kind of went to a price that they thought that their customers would be more comfortable paying, because if I charged what I wanted to, then I wouldn't have had as many kids sign up. So I went a little lower on the price, and then I actually had a lot of that was that was my camp that had the highest number of kids in it, actually. So just kind of being flexible and not going in with just like one price. And then the library programs is just a flat fee. And sometimes I think that I'm charging too much, but then I realize, like you said, like I drive there, I spend time going grocery shopping for it and planning it, setting up, cleaning up, the actual program time, driving back. So
in reality, you're probably not charging enough. So
yeah, like I could charge less, but then I'm not accounting for all of the time other than the actual program that I'm putting towards it. So I just have to stick to that.
Nice. So we had a question here. Easiest and most difficult age groups. Just kind of some curiosity from people. What do you know?
Yeah.
Do you group kids together? So do you say anyone from age 5 to 12, or what's your age group?
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
Well, I had a camp this summer where on the like listing, I think we must have said like ages, I don't know, 7 through 10 or something like that. But I don't think that the registration online was strict enough, because I had 2 first graders and then a 6th grader and a 7th grader, and that's not what I usually do. So I had this like really wide gap, which wasn't good. But so I think the toughest age group is that like 6th, 7th, 8th grade age group, because they're kind of too cool for it, but they're still kind of interested, but they don't want to show they're interested. And so they know a lot of the stuff, so it has to be interesting, and the snack has to be more complicated and complex. And they have all of their social stuff going on, so they're like picking on each other across the table, and you have to kind of make sure that you don't pick on one of them more than the other. So I think that's the toughest. And then my favorite group is probably the preschoolers or the like younger elementary, because they just enjoy it, and they like have fun with it. And especially with the preschoolers, if I do a library program, the parent or like the mother is usually the one there with them. So it's a really nice bonding experience. Like they'll make the snack together and then they'll eat. And I've had one boy at one library who's been coming to like every single program. So I'm like, I know his mom now. So I've seen him grow up over the past like year and a half. So it's nice having that.
When you have the parent child, do you do any specific other programs, or have you thought of offering? What, now that you've been doing this for a while, what kind of things are you thinking of? So I want to make sure I answered Trisha's question. Your programs in the summer, because I'm off to my next question. Ages 7 to 10 for like your camps, or is that what?
Yeah, well, so for some camps, I just did one age group, like the 7 to 10 age group, but then other places I did 2 camps for 2 age groups. So like grades, I don't know what age you are and which grades, but like grades 2 through 4, and then 5 through 7 was the way that we split. But then camps where I just did one, I kind of took like the middle range of both of those to kind of wheedle out the really young ones, because first grade, after doing that camp with 2 first graders in it, I think I won't do first graders again, because making ravioli with a 6-year-old is tough.
As a mom of a 5th grader, it was like first grade play dates were like torturous. It was work for me as a mom. It's like 2nd grade where, I don't know, things started to be like, oh yeah, come on over, because kids, they just were better able to, I don't know, be in an environment. Like, Side note. Now they're getting into, like you were mentioning, the 6th, 7th, and 8th, when they're just too cool for everything. Oh, you're like, who are these kids?
Why did you sign up if you're not interested?
So, okay. I want to be kind of cognizant of time, but kind of some misconceptions, I guess, or myths about this type of work that working in community programming, that you hear, or that you would want to kind of dispel for, dietitians listening.
I think just like when people think of entrepreneurial dietitians, they think of online counseling or just counseling in general. And like online counseling is definitely like the way that Instagram is like moving towards. But I I'm an entrepreneurial dietitian, but I don't really do anything online. Like my social media is really tiny, but I still have, all of these like clients. So I think just trying to kind of spread the word that you can do stuff like in your community and in your town. And like I'm going into the next state over from me as well, because I've been like ever so slowly trying to kind of increase my like radius. So I think you don't just have to counsel people if you work for yourself. Like I decide like where I want to go, when I want to go, when I want to go on vacation, if it's too far from me. If I like don't want to get up early, I can do a program later in the afternoon, in the morning. Like I decide everything. So it's not just counseling.
So now that you've been doing this for a couple of years, what are you setting your sights on as far as programming? What are you thinking of?
I think I'm still struggling with whether I want it to still be just me or if I want to kind of expand so that it's not just me, because it's a lot to be driving all over the place. But it always depends on whether you have people sign up. So, I could hire somebody with the premise that they would help me with so many programs, but then that program might get cancelled. So that's kind of tough. But I would like to kind of expand Food Explorers so that I was kind of in charge of a few other dietitians that were going around doing programs. So that would be nice.
Yeah, no, I think it's always that, people talk about expanding into whether it's a group practice or bringing on people, right? Then you have to pay those people. So making sure you're
Yeah,
bringing in
like
that.
an thing and things like that. And I've kind of built my business around like my face and my name, and it's me going to programs.
Mhm.
So then, if I hired somebody else, then it wouldn't be me and it wouldn't be
Yeah.
my face, and I couldn't see the program.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I read a book that I've read actually twice now. It's called Company of One, and it's really a great book about challenging our idea of what growth is as a business and how we're, especially in America, and the thought that you have to grow, like that's what a successful business does, and that you can have a very successful company of one and have no sights on getting bigger, that doesn't have to be how it is. Maybe having
Right.
contractors and other people, but it really challenged my idea of what does a successful business look like, and it can
Yeah.
look the way.
Yeah. And like, I think I would be perfectly happy if I stayed like, I have programs every day. I've just tried coming up with a new type of program where I do preschool programs through Parks and Rec departments, because my mornings were really empty. Like, if I didn't have a morning library program, then I would just have the morning free. And so I was like, I can fill this with preschool programs and just make it into like a multi-week session. So I just went to all of the Parks and Rec departments that I'm working with right now and just said, I have this idea for a preschool program for 4 weeks. Do you want to try it? And they said yes. So I think I have maybe 5 or 6 like 4-week preschool sessions slated, but I just had to cancel one because I didn't have anybody signed up. But then another one I have, it's half full already. So it just depends on like the town, on the day, on the price, all of these things. But I'm just trying something new and kind of seeing if it takes off.
Very interesting. So, what you mentioned, you know, some, My Plate, some other resources for, dietitians that might be looking for, I think, I mean, if you're jumping into this, one of the things that might be producing anxiety is, I don't know how to keep the kids entertained, coming up with activities, lesson planning, staying organized. Do you have like this, tackle box, calendar system? I think this idea of kind of fear, like, can I do this? Is a lot going on? Kind of talking through, those elements.
I think just an hour is longer than you think it is when you're with kids. But also, it takes them a lot longer to do things than I still get messed up by that. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, we'll do this for 20 minutes, but actually, we'll do it for half an hour instead. It can take them 10 minutes to get gloves on and wash their hands. So in my head, I'm like, this is going to take this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this. But then at the time, like putting plastic gloves on for them can take forever, and then preschoolers can take 15 minutes to eat a snack. So you just kind of have to I've had to loosen up with my like timings of things. And I have like quick little games that I can come up with on the spot. Like if I see that we have like 5 minutes until parents come, I'll be like, let's name a food for every letter of the alphabet. Or like flip over a piece of paper, I'm going to give you 2 minutes and you have to name as many protein foods as you can. Like little things like that that are really quick, but they just kind of, they fill a transition period where it's not like get out a worksheet and get out a pen or let's make another snack. It's you're going to win a prize if you do this in 2 minutes and then it's time to leave, that kind of thing. So just kind of coming up with things like on the spot really quickly, like Pictionary for food, or heads up and holding up a picture of a food and having them guess what it is, something really quick to get them off the fact that it's almost time to go.
Yeah, so let's just, I think sometimes it's nice to get a look under the hood before we, kind of wrap up. Is walk us through, let's say, I don't know if we want to do a camp or maybe it'd be better to do an after school program. How do you start? Like, how do you kind of, if it's a new group of kids, what do you do to kind of set the mood? What do you transition to? Maybe just a typical program.
Well, so I think with like a day one of camp, I always start with like a kitchen safety mini lesson of like things that we should do and things that we shouldn't do, and like expectations, and if we have knives, what shouldn't we do? We shouldn't run. If I'm speaking, then you should be quiet, and that kind of thing. And discipline is still something that I struggle with because I'm very soft spoken, and if there's a really challenging child, then I'm not their teacher. I'm a 1 hour a day a week thing, so I doesn't have the same respect as the teacher gets. But so I'll kind of go over the expectations and kind of what they're going to do. And then for a camp, we'll go right into a recipe for a snack. So I do a snack and a lunch. So we'll do a recipe, which usually takes like an hour. So if we started at 9, we'll probably start the snack around like 9:15, probably be done around 10:15.
So when you say you do a recipe, what does that look like as far as you have the education component, you have the cooking? What does doing a recipe look like?
So with the camps, I do a food group a day. So I have the recipes kind of correlate to the food group of the day. So kind of as we're doing it, I'll kind of throw in like little tidbits of information, but it's not like a sit down and listen to me lecture about grains. Because I kind of do it through the activities as well. So we'll go around and we'll read the recipe together, and then everyone will get a chance to measure out one thing, and everyone will get a chance to mix. Like we'll do 5 mixes each. And then we'll eat, and that's kind of like a little break. And then we'll move into like the main lesson of the day. So it might be like about sugar. I have a taste test worksheet that I've made where I bring 5 different types of yogurts with me with 5 different types of sugar in them, or 5 different amounts of sugar in them. And I'll have them write down like how it looks, how it smells, how it tastes, what the texture is. And then I'll have them guess how much sugar is in it. And then we'll kind of do the conversion of like teaspoons to grams of sugar. And then we'll kind of talk about foods that have sugar in it. And then we'll transition to making lunch probably, because if they get picked up, say 12, I want them to eat at like half an hour before that, because it can take them a while. So I'm always thinking like 5 steps ahead of what I want the timing to look like, because sometimes I've left it too late and then they're scrambling to eat before their parents come. So I'm always looking at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, as I'm listening to you, is a lot of trial and error, and just kind of not being afraid to jump in, and you kind of do have to make it up on the fly a little bit. But some things I've heard are having some quick activities to break up the time, making sure to have more planned than maybe you were ready for, getting organized when you can in advance.
Yeah, definitely bringing more than I need. Like I usually have brought like 1 or 2 extra activities that I don't even get to, but it's just the backup of having it with me just in case it's just a really big expanse of time that I wasn't expecting. I'll have something to do.
Do you connect with any other, as far as places to market your services to, Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups, other types of things?
I have like listings on the Girl Scouts website, and then like homeschool websites and stuff. But I don't pay for any of that. And then the libraries, my state has most libraries have a listserv where they can kind of review entertainers. So sometimes they'll ask, like, would you mind writing me a review? And so, like, I live in Connecticut, and when I was trying to get into Massachusetts, the first library I did, I gave them a discount if they wrote me a review after. So it's kind of like, if you wouldn't mind giving me this review, then I'll give you a discount. And so they wrote me a review, and then I had bookings from that review because they had sent it to other libraries. So they do a lot within their own network for libraries. So that's worked out really well.
Yeah. And I've also kind of heard, throughout this interview of, the expectation that you're going to reach out to, 10 schools and they're all going to be like, yay, have you come in, that, you reached out to so many and heard back from one. And yet, just taking that and growing it and doing a great job and growing the opportunities that are there, being persistent. I don't know, this is really, I don't know, I'm like, oh, this is so just proud from afar of what you've done and grown, and I'm showing what's possible for dietitians. And we see so much about, the flashy, social media and this and going live and, writing that, there's different ways to be an entrepreneur. And I would think it was so powerful what you were talking about is you're an entrepreneur too, right? You choose when to take time off. You choose when to take programs.
I could have a really flashy social media account, but I guarantee you the people that were following me and liking me wouldn't be the parents in my radius that would be actually signing up for programs. So yeah, I could have like thousands of followers, but would any of them live like 2 towns over from me that would sign their kids up for one of my programs? Like, most likely not. So like, I could get a lot of likes, but what I actually need is people to sign up for my programs. So,
which I think we call those, what do they call those? Vanity metrics, right? Like that are, because ultimately for you, making money is about getting kids in the programs that are paying so you can offer them. And how do you best do that? And I have to say, what you're doing, going after the reviews, learning how to librarians, find out about great, I don't want to call them entertainers, as you called them, so that you can grow that network and being, little businesswoman over here.
Yeah.
And that we are self-critical. I've also heard you say, I could do better, or I should do this or that. And that the reality is that everyone can always do better, but you're doing it and you're being successful. So this was great. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure those joining in, how can people connect with you, follow you on your, your social media, or come to your website? What can people do if they want to connect with you, or maybe they have questions?
On my website, which I think was listed on there, there's a submission form that you can fill out, and it'll go to my email if you have questions. And then like, you can Instagram message me or Facebook message me or something like that. I'm always on my email because I'm always looking for work. So
yeah. So that's actually great to point out. Maybe something for you to do in the future, even if you don't want to bring dietitians on to work for you. I'm sure dietitians wouldn't mind learning from you about how to do this successfully.
It was in the back of my mind that maybe one day I'll need help. So
yeah. Well, you're in Massachusetts. You're coming to Massachusetts. We're almost neighbors. We're like
I'm like right on the border of Connecticut.
We're like literally neighbors. We should have a coffee date, because that would be really fun. I could come to one of your programs and be a sous chef.
Yeah, you could.
I would love that. It would be so much fun.
Actually.
Well, you know what? Maybe we should put that on the calendar. Katie, thank you for coming on and being a guest today. Thank you everyone for joining in. And reminder, completely different topic, but 2 weeks from today, we have Chrissy Carroll back on the live show. She's been on before. She's going to be talking about the Google Search Console. Get to know the Google Search Console. So what search terms are bringing them into your website? How do you kind of get it set up? There's a lot of information in there, but I don't know about you. Whenever I go into Google Analytics, anything, I'm like, it can be a little overwhelming. So she's going to talk about what you need to know and kind of streamline using the Google Search Console. So definitely come back 2 weeks from today for that. So Katie, thank you again for coming on, and I hope you get to catch a little extra rest. Getting back from your trip. Thanks for making this happen today.
Thanks.
All right. Any Yes, and thank yous from those who are commenting here. Thank you for coming in. So yeah, just visit Katie's website. She also has a store on rd2rd.com.
Mm-hmm.
Her Nutrition Jeopardy game, very cool. It's set up